Welcome back. Today, we have an extra special treat for everybody. My guest today has walked through the fire, sat with it, decided to stay, cook, help others. He is the associate minister at Sacred Earth Sanctuary, a psilocybin church in Amesbury, Massachusetts. He is the founder of Inner Evolutions, a coaching program where he does one-on-one with integration, microdosing, emotional fluency. He is a grounded individual. He is extremely articulate. He is bright. He's my friend. I'm super excited to talk to him today. My guest, Rory Stephens.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much for coming, brother.
Pleasure.
How are you doing?
I'm doing amazing.
Yeah.
Honestly, doing amazing.
You look amazing with that head of hair.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Appreciate that.
shirt looks good. Head of hair looks good. Beard, yeah, you got it all going on. Love it. It's good. Us men need to be able to compliment each other and let us let us know that we're, hey, you look good. If you feel good, you look good. So super excited to dive into what you have helped create, and just to get into your brain a little bit today, and your way of thinking. And I think it would be great to start with just asking you, how Sacred Earth came to be, and how that, what is a psilocybin church, and, kind of just answer some of those questions for us.
Sure. So, as you said, I am the associate minister of Sacred Earth Sanctuary. We are a 508c1a nonprofit faith-based organization. My good friend Christina Ellery actually founded the church back in, it's been about 5 years. It was around 2020 when that came to be. So essentially I met Christina in a very serendipitous type of way, and she had just founded the church. She had just registered it with the state and everything. And from there we connected and were like directly on the same path. Obviously she had started the church. I hadn't done that, but we were both working with the mushroom in our own ways through our own healing. And so from there, we just started really building it out. She had been working with people quite a lot, different friends and different people that were referred to her. Then when I came in, we started to expand, building the website, doing all of the bylaws, statement of beliefs, things like that. And then it just started to snowball from there, really. I dove in with her and was doing a lot of my own inner work at that time. So I wasn't, very fluent in holding space for people. But working with her, I was able to connect with the mushroom more, do my own healing, and then ultimately learn how to hold space with her. So it's been, like I said, about 5 years now. After working with her for a year or so, I was offered appointed the associate minister role, where, the two of us really run the church. We both facilitate ceremonies, and, it's this beautiful church to be able to connect with ourselves, with something bigger, and of course, most importantly, with mushroom. And so we do it in a way where we are working with it spiritually. The mushroom is our sacrament. It's our way of being, our way of connecting to all that is, so that we can become the best versions of ourselves.
Does the ceremonies look like a typical church service where, someone's coming in and preaching, and how do those, what does it normally look like?
So it's not in the typical way you would envision a church. We don't have Sunday service, though we do have reoccurring ceremonies. Really what it looks like is, we do both group and solo ceremonies. So a group is anywhere up to 6 people. We try to keep them small and intimate, so that way it's safe space, not a lot of energy flying around and everything. But we come in, and people, come for basically a 24-hour ceremony. So we come in, we go for a nature walk, we set intention, so that way we have a clear guiding light of why the people are working with the mushroom, what's their purpose. From there, we do breath work to really help to move the energies that are going through, to, uncover any blocks that may be there, so that we can then step into ceremony. From there, ceremony is, 4 hours or so where everyone has their own mat and we drink a tea. That's how we work with the mushroom. So tea is much more gentle on the body. We brew it with fresh ginger, a little bit of honey. And so through that, people are able to really go internal. And we offer everybody these really beautiful masks so that they can do that internal journey. And so that lasts. Then, of course, we do homemade soup and we offer all of the nourishment and everything to everybody. From there, people stay the night. The next morning, we do integration, breakfast, everything like that before they, go back and start their real integration process, going back into everyday life. So that's our group ceremony. It's pretty similar with the solo as well. But of course, that's, more intimate with the individual themselves.
Were you guys only able to facilitate like one group per day? Was that the max, like 6 people per day and that's it?
Yeah, so really it's more, we do one group, it was like every other week. And then we would have solo ceremonies, kind of sprinkled in throughout the different weeks. We try to limit it because it's really demanding work. And we're not trying to do it as if it's this big business or anything. It's more so sacred work. So we limit it and do intake screenings with the people who come and everything. So it's not just structured of going. It's, one to, I think the max we ever did was maybe 3 ceremonies in a week. And it would be like, 2 solos spread out throughout the week and then maybe a group that lined up for that weekend. But it was never anything that it's like we do more than one a day or anything like that.
Yeah, it sounds wonderful. Because I've known a lot about, I'm obviously a big advocate for, for mushrooms, and I've heard so much about all of the, your church and all these beautiful churches, but I never was planning, I could definitely always learn how to work with the medicine better, but where I was at on my path is I was wanting to learn how to go internal on my own and going through that. And so not necessarily doing too many group sessions and just kind of learning with the medicine by myself. But I didn't necessarily, I did think that it was, because I know some are maybe more like this. Maybe there's some that are different. But I assumed that it was like a lot of people getting together, maybe 30, 40 people getting together. But that, what you described sounds, a lot better to me. Like it would a lot, you'd be able to go, the process would be, better, well received, and people could know how to work with it and how to, use the tools that they learn then once they leave.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing that is nice, so you hear about ayahuasca and ceremonies with that medicine, and usually it is sometimes 30 or so people. But the difference with that, at least the way I've always viewed it, is like ayahuasca is a brew that everybody drinks from the same brew. When it comes to the mushroom, it's much more individual, where we select the mushrooms based on the individual, based on their experience, based on what they're working on, their energy, and everything like that. So we try to keep it a smaller container because it is a more intimate individual experience rather than this huge collective experience where ayahuasca can be more like that. And it just makes you feel safer.
Yeah. What is the pre-interview, like what was that process like?
It's a good question. And, for us, it was really important to make sure that people come and sit for the right reasons. And so we have a full intake screening process where people are filling out an entire form, really to break down what their intentions are, maybe their life experiences, if they've worked with any plant medicines before, and then what they're navigating. If there are any medications that they are taking, all of those things really matter. And so once they fill out that form and submit it, we go through and, of course, screen them, and then we set up an intake screening meeting, essentially. So we hop on Zoom with them and have usually like a half hour to an hour call to really get to connect with them face to face, so that we can create an intimate connection rather than it just being another person, because this is real, deep, vulnerable work. And so you have to have that trust there to really know that people are coming for the right reasons, to be able to do what they want to do properly without trying to escape, but rather trying to heal or to connect to something bigger than them. And usually those go hand in hand. But then from there, everything starts to blend where now you have this true connection with the individual. And then if they come for ceremony, they trust you already. They're warmed up. They know that they can sink in and open up without needing to have their guard up in the ways that maybe they would if we didn't create that connection previously.
Yeah, absolutely. How challenging was it to see, like, this is deep work. This is the deepest work that you can do. How challenging was it to see that many people? Even though it was, few people, comparatively, like we just mentioned, you're still taking on so much from, you're still hearing so much and being there for so many people to, to go through this process. It seems like it can be some really heavy work.
It is. And, throughout the time, we've had to learn a lot. A lot of our own training is from our own work inside. And so we don't have this path magically laid out ahead of us, and we have to continuously adjust. And like you mentioned, it is heavy work, and like seeing the true essence of people and what they're actually going through is very hard. And also what they're letting go of is heavy energy that sometimes is absorbed in a sense. And so we have to take the time to be able to really ground back in, to almost purge anything that isn't ours, so that we can come back to our own baseline to step in to be able to support the next individual in the ways that they deserve. But it has been this process of kind of walking in the fire, because when you do it a lot over and over, you can get burnt out really easily. You're always supporting everyone, and if you don't know how to properly nurture yourself, then that takes a toll on your system.
Was it taking a toll on you?
Oh yeah, and it did. And there's been a few times that I got very burnt out. One time towards the beginning, I was more like, I was kind of almost losing myself, and maybe that's not the best expression for what it really was, but it was just like I needed to take a step back, really come back into my own center again before I could step back in. And we have created these natural seasons within the church based on what we've learned, where throughout the winters we kind of pause ceremony. And because the summer is, if you look at the seasons of nature, winter is about introspection. It's about taking the time to really do deep reflection, to heal and to reground before spring comes and you start to emerge again. And so we focus mostly on that springtime into summertime type of ceremony. Fall is kind of the closing, and we do, little gatherings and stuff to start to bring everybody together for the closing of the season. And then throughout the winter, we allow ourselves to reground, to rehome, to take those introspective steps to figure out what comes next.
Yeah, that sounds right. I think that sounds like a pretty good process to come upon. And what are some of, like, because you told me you had to keep, you have to evolve and you had to change, and you learn a lot as you go. And I think a big question that like a lot of people have, or like that's kind of maybe out there, is like, because you are putting people in a in an altered state of mind, and you can be suggestive and all this different stuff, and there's a lot of ethical community questions, and that people have when they talk about psychedelics. And I'm just curious what practices or policies you implemented to try to keep as many people safe as possible.
Yeah, I mean, throughout it, like I said before, it naturally evolves, right? But what we have realized is that you really want to try to interact with them while they're in ceremony as little as possible. We are there as kind of a grounding post so that they can feel safe, where we are transmuting any energies to be able to really offer it back in an unconditional love type of way, so that they can feel safe enough to go into places where maybe there is some fear present. But we can't go and project our own beliefs, our own thoughts, our own ways of being on these individuals, because the way our church operates is it's not all around the same belief. It's about coming to connect with the mushroom. And so everybody believes different things. And so it is our deepest desire to create a safe space, but it's never our desire to try to project what we believe onto someone else. And so when it comes to ethical things, it is all around, what does this person actually need to feel safe? And sometimes it's really just being there and them knowing that they're safe because you're there. And, you have to have a very strong moral compass to make sure that you're not stepping over any boundaries, because people are going into the deepest, most painful parts of themselves. And we, a lot of the times, can't even start to wrap our heads around what people have gone through. And so we have to assume, in a sense, that they are, very fragile almost. And it's not to project that, but to make sure that they feel safe. Even putting your hand on someone just out of support, someone can interpret that in a way that you didn't mean at all based on what they've gone through. And so you have to make sure that you are very aware of how you show up in a way of supporting them, so that no matter what happens, they feel safe. And so it is kind of like walking on a tightrope, and you go a little this way and you come back to balance and you figure out what works. And this is why we do intake screening, to really connect with the people so we understand what they've been through, so that then we can show up for them in the ways that they need.
It's pretty interesting and unique in that, I think sometimes when some people think of like psychedelic work, they think, I know a lot of guides who do it this way, is that the person, takes medicine and then there's interaction. There's interaction with the guide, and they're helping to facilitate, some type of conversation or some type of learning or knowing within that person. But I think it's kind of cool that the church setting and what you guys are doing is not that, because you're not trying to help necessarily with somebody's, essentially you are, basically, because it is going to be a byproduct of it, but it's not the goal to provide mental health care for these people. It's to have them connect with the mushroom and learn how to connect with themselves.
Exactly. Because we are our own greatest teachers. We, most of the time, if I were to try to tell anyone anything for me to help them, because of course we've all gone through our things, so we have certain suggestions that we would love to give, but what works for me doesn't necessarily work for them, and my beliefs may not align with them. And so if you're in this altered state and you're having this social interaction in ways which may not intentionally be to persuade them one way or another, naturally you're wide open and absorbing all of this information that does persuade you in the way that it's being interpreted. So that's where social interaction for us is very minimal, other than maybe, especially in solos, where with some solo ceremonies we'll journal for them their experience. And so the only social interactions that come with that is if they're telling us what they're going through and what they're having for realizations, and we're kind of documenting it. But we are very almost passive in a way where we're just letting them express, and we're, being with them as they express and share themselves, but we're not necessarily providing things back to them in that way that could steer them in a certain direction.
Yeah, that's cool. That's it's effective, and it creates just a safer safer barrier to any of the the ethical stuff that could happen when somebody is wide open. Especially, it's like you guys seem to have kept it nice and small, in that it was just you and Christina who was facilitating these sessions, which I think was another nice barrier that was probably taken, because when you have a system and you start having more people do this, there's more, not that it would happen, but there's just more room for it.
Yeah. And that's something that we've reflected a lot upon. With anything like this, it naturally grows, especially as the psilocybin work is starting to come more into the public eye of how impactful it is. But as we continued to do this, we saw how our structure, the way we facilitated, really was deeply impactful for people. We have such a high standard for ourselves that we saw the only way we could really bring someone in to be at the same facilitator level with us is we'd have to create this like rigorous training system for people to go through to really understand the ins and outs. Because if you don't know, you don't know. And if you don't know, you can cause problems. And so that's something that we've had to really sit with of like, okay, how do we potentially expand to hold space for more people while keeping our same exact way of going about it so that we can have this safe space for these incredible results for people. And we've had to make tough decisions on almost intentionally keeping us smaller than maybe the universe was trying to force us to be, but we've also seen that as an opportunity to stay in our integrity too, to make it more about creating this intentional safe space rather than becoming something huge.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. What are some of like the amazing, like, no, I shouldn't even put a word to it, but what did you see people go through?
Well, there's a wide variety of what I've seen.
Before I asked that, I said, would you and Christina take mushrooms when you were facilitating the sessions?
We would only take a pinch of the mushrooms that the individuals are sitting with so that we are in the same vibration as them, but we're not going directly into the space so that a safe environment can be held, a safe container can be held.
And what would the dose be?
For what we would take?
Not for the participants that you're explorers.
It's interesting because our process, a lot of people hear about, Terrence McKenna, you sit with 5 grams, a hero dose, and pitch black and dead silence, and they think that that's what they need. But in reality, it's rare we get up to 5 grams for people. It's usually anywhere from 2 grams to 3.5, I would say, is the average range. And we go about it in a unique way where we don't disclose to the individuals the dose that they are sitting with until if they want to know afterwards. Because our mind is extremely incredible when it comes to creating our realities, creates our reality. But so what we believe influences that experience. So if I was to tell someone you're sitting with 2 grams, their belief of thinking either that's a lot or that's nothing is going to influence what their experience is. And so when we do it, we connect with the mushroom in a way based on, like I said earlier, their experience, their energy, what they've done before, and we find the dosage and then create the tea and offer it. From there, they have the experience that they need, not based on what they believe the dose is going to create, but rather whatever internally is needing to be shown through the mushroom.
Well, how would you decide the dose?
It's all in your intuitive feeling.
Cool.
And we have, all the mushrooms that we work with, I grow for the most part. And we have this deep, beautiful connection with them where we've worked with them, a ton. And so we know exactly really their energy in a way where they speak to us through that feeling. And so when we are creating the medicine, it is about literally connecting with the mushroom and choosing, basically having them through us choose what mushrooms are the right mushrooms, how much is the dose. And a lot of the times it's just like this intuitive knowing based on, the individual, what they are looking to accomplish, and then what the mushroom is ready to reveal to them.
So you have different types of mushrooms, different strains of mushrooms that you were growing, and that would also be something that you intuitively picked for the people.
Absolutely. Each strain has a different energy to it. It has a different potency to it. So you have like a golden teacher, and think about the name of that. It's a golden teacher. So it has this warm, gentle energy where it's going to show you the way, but it's going to show you in a way that is safe. Where you have a penis envy is much more potent. It is, in my opinion, more the energy of truth. So it like almost can reveal what's behind the veil without any or not much compassion. It's just, here's the truth. And so if somebody's nervous system and self isn't ready to just see the truth, then you know that it's not right. And so you connect with the different energies and have these relationships with the mushrooms so that you know how to work with them because they're telling you through what they have to offer what is best for the individual.
Yeah, so those are the two main ones that you would work with, is the penis envy and the golden teacher.
Yeah, but I mean, at one point towards the beginning, we worked with more. Then we started to really find this pattern that it was mostly penis envy, mostly golden teacher, actually, even over that. But then, there's Z, there's, OG penis envy, even albino penis envy. There's so many different hillbillies, pumpkin hillbillies. There's so many varieties. Eventually, it comes down to what are the large energetic differences, because the subtle ones with where these people aren't going to make much of a difference. But, the energy of a penis envy versus a golden teacher are largely different. So then we can work based on that general analysis of what they have to offer, rather than needing the difference between a pumpkin hillbilly and a hillbilly, where they're super similar, but there's just a little difference.
So yeah, that's really beautiful that they're, because I've seen, like I said, I've seen all these strains, and there's so many that are coming out, and I maybe I should pay more attention to that, and hone in on that a little bit more. For me, the experience is usually, they all are different, so I should just start, learning a little bit more about that, because I think that's great. And then it's going to be fascinating what it looks like in the, in the future, like when when we learn more about this, and because, we can study it a little bit more, and there's more people who are, communicating, and like, as, it's only, it's, you had to start a church to be able to legally, to give yourself legal protection to be able to do it.
Right.
And so when that doesn't exist, that opens up a whole new, amount of people that can do it in service, and that we can learn, from that. And okay, but now ready to move on to the good stuff, man. What what you learned, I need to know. I don't need to know, but I would love to know what you learned, facilitating, these ceremonies for, this amount of people, and, what that looked like.
Well, it looked like having a large realization that everybody's going through something in the deepest way. Even the people who are extremely good at wearing a mask. And it has ultimately taught me to have the most amount of compassion I could ever imagine for every person. And that now I see myself in everyone because of what they've gone through. Because I know that everyone's going through something based on just life, because being a human is hard. And we're always going through things, even if we don't realize it. Sometimes we have covered up a heck of a lot of stuff in our lives because it feels safer to do that. And I've realized that deep down, most people are hiding a lot of things that hurt. But I also see the resilience in the human too. Seeing that even though all of these people are hurting, they're still pushing to become better, to move towards hope more than anything. And that's why I think that the mushroom to me is so beautiful, because it is giving this really incredible opportunity for people to tune into hope. Because a lot of people have gone through different mental health routes, medications and this and that, and they've felt hopeless because it never really did what it needed to. If you work with the mushroom properly and you have an open heart and an open mind, then it really is a path that can change everything for you and, in my opinion, the world. If we all turn in and do our own healing, then slowly over time, the whole world changes.
Cannabis products are becoming more popular every day. Whether you're looking for the best night's sleep, trying to mitigate daily stress, or just trying to enjoy some laughter with friends, OG Cannabis is the store for you. OG Cannabis has an unbiased approach that is unique and simple. Unlike the competition, they don't sell their own manufactured products, but instead proudly showcase the best vendors across Maine. A dispensary like no other. Come and visit today at 18 American Way, Elliott, Maine. OG Cannabis. Oh, and don't forget to use my promo code, Dr. BeeWell. See you guys there. Giddy up. Yeah. Is there levels to it though? Like what people go through, and the suffering or trauma that they have. Like I understand everyone's been, everyone does have something that they're carrying for sure. And the reason I'm asking this is because I am a pretty empathetic, sympathetic person, but I don't have compassion for everybody. And I mean, I do have compassion for everybody in certain circumstances, but not some, like if somebody to me outwardly sometimes looks like they don't necessarily need compassion because they seem like they're a happy person, internally, and they materialistically have some stuff, and they, they're not suffering that way at all, then I'm like, I don't necessarily have, and it's, if they went through something, and I knew about it, I would have compassion for them. But is there levels to it?
I think that something that I always have to reflect on is, what is my definition of compassion in general? Because a lot of the times we confuse compassion with almost a slight sense of sympathy. And so compassion to me is seeing the humanness in another. It is not, you are suffering and I feel bad for you. It's saying, I see you, you're a human, here we are. And so even if someone has it all put together and they're living a life that's amazing and they're happy and this and that, they're still a human, and I see them. And that's my compassion. If someone is suffering and they're going through things, I might have more of a combination of sympathy because they're like struggling. And so my heart goes to them in a little bit different of a way than just compassion. Though the compassion's of course blended in there because I see them as a human that's having a hard time too. So there are absolutely levels, and everyone has their own unique thing too. And I think that it's really important that we reflect on compassion in a way of seeing it in a light through opportunity rather than the other way around where, sympathy is like, oh, how can I help you because you're way down here? Compassion is like, we're all right here. And it shifts the playing field a little bit. So that way we're just humans helping each other and there's no hierarchy at all.
I want to get there. I want to have that point of view, and I want the world to be like that. Like, that's right. Yeah, that's that's utopia. That's, even if everything's not great, if we're all there together, but that's like, I don't know, humans don't look at each other that way, really, right? That's not the reality necessarily. Not right now.
Yeah.
Right.
And who knows? I don't know if that's something that's possible. I believe that if we can imagine it, we can at least get close. And through that, maybe you could describe it as a utopia, but even then, I don't know that paradise in a way of there being an absence of suffering is possible. Suffering creates transformation. It creates the opportunity to expand. If you never suffered, you'd be content in just staying right here. And then everything would be like, yeah, pretty good, but it could be better. And usually you take those steps when you're suffering and can't deal with the current situation anymore, so you make moves to move forward.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what's cool about the mushrooms is that sometimes people are actually in the place where they're suffering really badly and they're incapable of moving forward because their nervous system is so shot, and their defense mechanism is to just do as least possible and just curl in defense mechanism and defensive posture. But the mushrooms teach you that you can have a different perspective is actually possible. And this is like what it's done for me, at least. It showed me, like, when I've been in despair, and at least not necessarily despair because I had come out of despair, on my own some, but when I really probably just kind of pushed it away, and then when I came to the mushrooms and started to work with them, it was like, whoa, why was I feeling that way? I don't need to feel that way. It was just a perception in my head, and I can shift that and change that. That's how the mushrooms are so powerful that way, and the shift in perception. And so, yeah, I think more humanness and more. Yeah, so if more people do mushrooms, they'll probably, they'll be not. Yeah, I do advocate, because you don't necessarily advocate for that, right? Or how do you advocate for, how should we go forward with the mushrooms? What's the best path here? Because it is, like you already mentioned it, man. It became mainstream. You guys were in Boston Magazine. the centerfold, right there, right in the middle, letting you people know this is medicine now. It's been, legalized in, decriminalized in tons of jurisdictions. It's been legalized in a couple of states. Where are we going?
I mean, I think that it's going to be very interesting to see what does happen. I think we are in this place where, unfortunately, of course, in our society, we have a lot of corporate people that want to monopolize stuff. And we see it even in the cannabis industry and everything. Now it is businesses own it. And so with the mushroom, I think it's going to be a little different, though, because you don't just, at least in my perspective, if you're doing it intentionally, you don't just do this all the time. And, maybe microdosing to an extent, but to be able to own it in a way of saying, this is mine. Here, let me give this to you because I've created this, is an illusion. And so we're going in a place where I think it's really important to realize that we need to combine the spiritual aspect with the medical aspect so that they're working together rather than only becoming a medical medicine, because you can't separate the spirit out of it. It's just not possible, in my opinion. And so from there, as it becomes more and more legalized or decriminalized, whatever, as more people can work with it, we're going to see, this uptick in almost crisis at first, because we are in the largest mental health crisis we've ever seen. And what does the mushroom do? It reveals what needs to be seen. And if you don't know how to work with it, then you're going to go into psychosis. You're going to go into these states of, you said, like shutdown, fear, survival states that are to protect yourself because the stuff you don't want to look at is coming up. The mushroom is a beautiful thing when we understand it is showing us where we need to work. It is not here always. I mean, recreational use to some extent is healing, but to use it as an escape, I don't think leads you anywhere good. And that goes with anything, of course. But in society, a lot of people just jump to cannabis and just smoke all day long because it just, it almost becomes this normalized thing. With the mushroom, I don't think we can do that. And so we have to be careful because people have been programmed in society to do that with substances. Oh, it's legal now. I'm going to go and get an ounce of mushrooms and eat them every day. What's going to happen with that? It starts to shift your reality. It starts to cause some sort of a kind of mental break.
So for microdosing, according to you, there's time on, time off. What is that like? What does that look like? Because that, obviously you don't want people to be taking mushrooms all the time.
Well, so microdosing is a little different. What I was just saying, I was more in reference of larger doses, macrodoses and stuff. With microdosing, it's a subperceptual amount.
But the macrodoses, dude, the way that our receptors work with psychedelics is you would have to take such massive doses if you were going to do it consistently every day. You need your time, your receptors to replenish. And that's that. If that doesn't tell you right there that we have been integrating and using, these molecule, this other substance that's on this earth with us for as long as we've been here. And so there's a reason that does that to us, where it creates, this great experience where you can learn from. And then if you try to do it again right off, it's not there. The receptors need time. You need time to integrate that experience.
Right. And that's something that's really beautiful about it, because it forces us to have to step back. And it also exposes am I using this for the right reason? Because if you're just trying to escape and you're trying to do it every day and all of a sudden it doesn't work, now you're okay, well, I have to clearly reflect on why I'm trying to escape. But still, it's just why do we do it? I think that's always a really important reason, or an important thing to look at. But, when it comes back to that microdosing question, it's you do work with different protocols, and you hear about Paul Stamets or James Fadiman. There's different protocols that they offer where Fadiman is only working 1 day on, 2 days off, or Stamets protocol is 4 days on, 3 days off. And so no matter what, I always recommend, and most do recommend, that you take a couple days off throughout the week from microdosing. And that is, to your point, to reset those receptors, to allow your body, your system to come back down to baseline and to also integrate. Because if we're continuously staying in this altered vibration, how do we come back to our own vibration? And we have, like, the goal in my eyes is always, we use these medicines to be able to learn how to live without needing them.
Mm-hmm.
It is not to use them in a way where we use them for the rest of our life. Like what most medications, antidepressants, this and that, is promoted. Oh, you're going to probably need this forever. Even though it shouldn't be that way, it is.
It is absolutely that way. That's the way the system is set up, and there's no learning with it. And that's why I love mushrooms. It's what I talk about the most with people, is like, how I know that it's good is because it's not like other drugs where you think about, like with, other illicit drugs, where you think about it the next day or you're drawn towards it. If you're doing it properly, you actually are like, I don't want to do that again. Give me some time, please. I need a little bit of time here to get through that and work through what we just went through. It's so that you don't think that, like, because with microdosing, you don't think somebody should be doing that forever.
I don't personally think so, no.
Did you ever think that, like, on your own journey?
Sure, to an extent. I thought, I could do this forever. Makes me feel great. And maybe not always doesn't make me feel great, but it enhances me to some extent, almost like a breath of fresh air. That
right.
Subtle, like, oh.
Right, because that was your journey, right? You had depression, and you were in a deep state of it, and you had to climb out of that. Like,
absolutely.
Can you speak on that for a second?
Yeah. I mean, I went through severe major depression and anxiety for quite a long time. I mean, first time I ever really reflect on seeing it was probably in like 7th grade, where like I was harming myself even to that extent then. And then when I went to college, it became very severe. And it's because there was stuff in me that was trying to come up. I didn't know how to be me. And so I was shutting down because I didn't know how to exist. And it became so severe that I was harming myself a lot, basically as bad as it could get before you actually like take your own life.
Like physical harm. Like,
oh yeah.
Yeah, like cutting yourself and like.
Yep. All the time. I mean, it was the type of thing I used to do that daily for weeks straight. Stay up all night long and hurt myself because it was the only way I could find a sense of peace. I just couldn't bear existence. And so eventually, I think it was probably my junior or senior year of college, it got to the place where it was like, I had this pinnacle point question of, am I going to finally end it because I can't keep doing this? Or am I going to figure out how to resolve this because I can't keep doing this? So either way, I had to figure out how to not continue to suffer in the ways that I was. And I had done antidepressants, I had gone to therapists, all of this stuff, and it just made me feel, the antidepressants made me feel numb. So I felt more disconnected from myself. It wasn't helping. Maybe I was able to flatline a bit because not all the emotions were there. You're emotionally blunted. And then the therapists, I had some awesome therapists, other ones that felt like a robot. And it just always made me feel like I was just continuously talking about my problems and going in circles. So then I turned in and I said, I need to figure out how I work as a human. So that way I can reverse engineer myself and solve this. And then give this back to the people, because I felt like the mental health industry was straight up stuck in an illusion based on us focused only on the biology of the brain and not about the patterns of themselves and what is actually being created, because biology is the symptom of what's happening in the self.
Biology is a symptom of what's happening in the self.
At least most of the time.
Yeah.
You think about, people say, oh, it's your genetics, it runs in your family. There's a saying of like, your genetics, your DNA is the loaded gun, but your environment pulls the trigger.
Mm.
And so those dormant genes can stay dormant forever. But if there is a dysregulation in yourself, in your environment, then the biology becomes activated in this dis-ease.
Yeah, 100%, dude. Yeah, 100%. Like epigenetics, you can dictate just by thought. how, you're different from the rest of your family. And, it's actually kind of wild. Like it is on a biological level, like you're saying, why things happen like that is, or any thought that we have, it's when our DNA is being transformed into mRNA and then is being expressed as a protein.
Right.
And there's like deep studies in showing that we have control over this and that we can change the way that this stuff happens.
I mean, there's a lot of proof around how your biology can change just from your beliefs alone. Literally. Yeah. And so it shows how interconnected the mind is with our ways of being. And I saw that I needed to understand how I worked, who I was, all of these different, almost existential questions to be able to figure out how to live.
Why were you so sad?
Because I didn't know who I was. Because I, deep down, was out of alignment with who I was. But because I didn't know who I was, I didn't know how to come into alignment with myself. And so I always, in this society, we look outside for the answers. So you get more materialistic items, you get a better job, you do all of these things, and maybe if you get a wife, a house, and you have a family, you'll be happy. But the truth is we rarely turn inside and reflect on our own inner world, because it's scary. Because then we have to look at the darkness inside. And I was just miserable, thinking I wasn't good enough, I wasn't worthy, I had to be perfect to be loved, and it was that the world would be better off without me in it. I was just a burden to it. And because of those beliefs, I was depressed.
Did you believe that you were a burden to like other people?
To everything.
To everything,
to the world, even to myself,
Right.
But especially other people, because no one wants to hang out with a depressed person.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's like I relate with you so much on this. It's like in a different way. Like I was, I didn't know ever like how to be myself. And still to this day, I'm still working every day to figure out, who that person is and who am I, and to authentic, because I know that when I don't do that, the alternative is sickness.
Absolutely.
Dis-ease, like you said. I was sick, man. It was drugs for me, that like, I got caught up in it where I got into a car accident, and then, I was given access to drugs, and kind of that's where I learned like, oh man, I can feel better. I can do the things that I want to do in life and really what it was is it allowed me why the reason I was uncomfortable doing maybe the things that I was doing, being in pharmacy school, is like because that's not authentically who I was. I wasn't authentically that person.
Right.
And so, or that's what I think, that's the story. It's a story I tell myself. I don't, I think it is the case, I do, but it's a story I tell myself. And maybe that's me judging myself too. Like, oh, are you, should you be allowed to feel this way? Should you I'm just, cause it happened, cause it happened. So I'm trying to explain it away in my head, opposed to being like, oh, hey, it just happened and it was what it was. It's interesting.
I think a lot of it though comes down to the resistance. And so when we are resisting things, then there's the dis-ease, right? So it's like, was it for myself, the authentic version of myself, the true version of me that I wanted to be? I wanted to do other things than what I was doing. And so that resistance is what caused the disharmony in myself more than anything. If I had the opportunity to learn how to, accept where I was, would that same struggle be there? Maybe not. And I'll never actually know. But I think that a big part of it is learning that we have to really tune into ourselves to find our truth of what we actually want to do. And I, went to school because that's what you do. That's what society tells you to do. I was good at doing, 3D modeling. So I went to industrial design. I didn't know what I actually wanted to do. I just had a teacher tell me that. And I said, okay, here I go. And then I went and I realized, wow, I don't want to do this at all. But I had to keep doing it because I couldn't throw the money out the window.
But you realized it. Mm-hmm. So there's something about the colleges of the Fenway area, because that's where Rory and I both went to school. Rory went to Wentworth. I went to the Massachusetts College of Pharmacy. And I had the same experience where, but I didn't even know that it wasn't what I wanted to do. My brother was a pharmacist, and that it was the recession when we started school. And I was like, oh, this is, I can make this much money when I get out because my brother's doing well. And I don't know what I want to do. So this seems fine. But then I just like threw myself into it. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I had enough. Like I really liked the socialization and leading, and I was running an organization, and through my fraternity and all these other clubs that I was a part of, and that's like where I really wanted to spend my time, with people, just like going to classes like as less that I could, but still being able to have decent grades. And I didn't even, did you realize it then that this isn't what I wanted to do? Because I didn't realize that.
I mean, I did, but I think at first it was more subconscious than conscious. And when I say that, I mean that I saw I had super resistance, didn't want to be going and doing this stuff, And part of it was because I was a perfectionist, because my worth was based on how good I was at stuff, and I wasn't as good as a lot of people in school. And so that plays out too. But as I reflect back on it, the biggest thing that I've learned is that I had to still go through these things, because I was discovering the little pieces inside of it that were who I was. Because I do love design. I love making beautiful things. I love building stuff with my hands and all of that. But the thing is I'm not an industrial designer. It's just characteristics in myself that create parts of myself. And so, though I'm not an industrial designer, like a lot of the people I went to school with got an industrial design job, I never felt like I fit into that role. I was just expanding my skill sets of parts of my personality based on being able to see beauty and create beauty and everything. So then I could combine that with the other things I had to create me. And that goes back to the existential crisis thing of myself, where the biggest question I always had was, who am I? And I knew deep down I was never a role. So whether I was an industrial designer, or I was a depressed person, or I was, I became an engineer, I was never those things. I was just a person doing those things, where so many of us identify with our roles to such an extent it becomes us. And that's where I felt disconnected too, because these other people had become those roles. And I was like, how could I possibly be what I do? I am a person behind all of that, and I am multifaceted. So there was a lot of disconnect there. And slowly over time, I realized that, these are just parts of me. It's not all of me.
Were you like, where was that on the timeline? Because it sounds to me like you found mushrooms, and then mushrooms helped you teach you some of this stuff.
Oh, this is a good question, because I didn't find mushrooms until much later on. And so, I had done mushrooms like one time in high school, and it didn't do much for me, honestly, at the time. And so because it didn't do much, I kind of just never really worked with them again. Through college, I had worked with LSD, but because I was depressed, it brought up all of this stuff that was dark and almost on the verge of bad trips quite often. Doesn't mean I stopped doing it. I just push things to the side, as we do as humans who don't know what we're doing. But when I came to that question when I was depressed later on of like, I need to figure out who I am or else not be around anymore, that sent me on this deep spiritual journey of reverse engineering myself and reading all of these self-help books and stuff to discover how I work. Over time, probably I graduated in 2016 from college, and I met Christina around 2020. So it had been a handful of years of this spiritual journey. And then I found mushrooms and started to work with them recreationally, not with intention, but rather having fun, because I went to electronic shows a lot. But when I did it, it opened me up and it made me feel love again in a way that I hadn't felt in a long time, because I had been so disassociated from depression. So it was probably around, 2019 or so when I started working with mushrooms again. And then, a little bit later, that's when I met Christina.
Yeah, it's yeah, I have my path is similar, whereas like I didn't, I got out of it, I got healthy, I got away from the drugs, wasn't doing the drugs anymore, and then kind of was just like, figuring different stuff out and figuring out how to live, and was kind of almost afraid of mushrooms because it's like, oh, it's a drug and you can't do that. But I had enough experiences with it when I was younger in college where like I remember saying to myself like, oh, this is something that I'm going to do at least once a year for the rest of my life.
Mm.
And like first time I did mushrooms, that's what I thought. Like, wow, I feel so good. And this is giving me so much perspective, and I'm learning so much, and it, makes me feel good. And I'm going to do this to help expand my mind once a year. And then, so I had that experience, but then I got away from it because I just thought like I can't do anything ever. That's bad. Bad. And then I was able. I explored cannabis, and that was extremely helpful for me. It was a good tool, and that made me say like, hey, I think that I can safely do this, and I can this. I think that there's profound impact with this, and this is my intuition is telling me this, and so I'm going to go towards it. And then that's where like more profound changes happened, like where I was like, I kind of just had gotten myself healthy and gotten away from it. But then I was like, oh, well, now I can change the way that I feel about myself, and I can figure out the life that I want. And, and I've been building that, and there's been ebbs and flows to it for sure. And, I think that I'm on the right path. I know I'm on the right path, but I don't know if everything has been revealed yet. For my authentic self and like I said, I think the greatest gift that like people can give to the world is like realizing, what their passion and their skill set, is and who they are. And then to be able to share that with others and serve others in some capacity. I think that is the ultimate giddy up. And so I think I'm getting closer because it feels like I am. But always, there's always room for growth, and I'm always trying to figure out like who exactly I am. Like, do you know exactly who you are today?
No.
Okay, cool.
And I think, truthfully, I have found myself more by accepting that I might not ever fully know who I am, because life is a natural evolution of ourself. And the self is nothing more than what you construct based on your thoughts, your beliefs, the things you do in life, and it always is changing. But when I was scared that I didn't know who I was, it was a problem. When I embrace that I don't know who it is I am, then I'm a person that's always changing and always becoming more myself based on the stuff that happens in life.
Yeah, but can you get taken away from yourself, or is there a way that you'll go like down the other path?
I think that it's all your perspective.
Yeah, if you're thinking that way, you're gonna go down that. You'll continue down that path. I mean, dude, how powerful thoughts are, and what I've just been able to do, just because a lot has to do with your environment, and like if you got to put yourself in the right environment, in the right space to do it and to heal. And like that, like being in a house where you have a toxic relationship with people, say your parents or, whatever it is, that's going to be a harder place to do, to do that type of work and to learn. But yeah, I've been able to, I think that's great. 'Cause if you can change the way that you think, and your thought process is now, I might not ever figure out exactly who I am, but I'm always becoming more of myself. Yeah, that's a cool one.
Because I look at it as life is all the journey. I don't know that it's possible to be off the path, because getting off the path is also the path to learn how to get back on the path. And so that's where it's all your perspective and what you believe. If you, like, I work with so many people who say, I feel like I'm going backwards. Literally, they know that life is like this transformational spiral where you always revisit the stuff, but you do it with more experience, more wisdom, more knowledge every time to heal and expand more and more. So you feel like you're going backwards, but really you're just revisiting stuff to learn more from it with a new set of eyes. And so if we can shift how we look at it, our whole lives change.
Let me introduce you to Elevate, a premium functional mushroom company focused on supporting your highest potential. They offer a range of powerful supplements crafted from the finest medicinal fungi designed to naturally enhance your well-being. Elevate carries everything from mushroom tinctures, capsules, and teas to their delicious mushroom-infused coffees. All of their products are made with USA-grown mushrooms and contain only wild medicinal mushrooms, no psychoactive compounds. I personally use their focus tincture every day and love their chai tea blend. It's my go-to for a calming yet energizing boost. Elevate's products support mental clarity, immunity, and overall vitality. They ship nationwide, so whether you're new to functional mushrooms or already a fan, Elevate has something for you. Check them out at shopelevatemushrooms.com, where you will find a detailed description of each product and experience the difference for yourself. How would you shift how you look at something where people feel like they can't, someone feels like they can't get ahead, and they're always, they don't have enough time to be able to do something, they say they have a family, they're trying to grow a business, they're trying to figure it out and trying to do as best that they can, but they feel like they don't have time. How should that person mind shift?
I mean, first, what I always have people do is tune into essentially cultivating a deep sense of self-awareness, to really look at the truth rather than what they believe to be the truth, because our mind is super powerful. And so if you continuously tell yourself over and over again that you don't have time, your reality is that you don't have time. But if you step back and almost tune into the witness of yourself to see if it's actually true you don't have time, or if your nervous system is just so dysregulated that even when you're trying to rest, you feel like you're still doing something. Now you start to break out of the illusion of maybe you actually don't have time, or maybe you actually have way more time than you think. But when you don't have time, you're so exhausted that you can't do anything. And so you need to look at shifting that. So cultivating that self-awareness is like the first step, but then it's also like really visualizing who you want to be. What does that version of you do in your life? And then shifting to find alignment, because if you're doing, like, setting your priorities where, say, you want to go and do something new, but you don't have time, it's like, is it really a priority? Because if it was, you may be making time for it. But there's so many variables with this, and it all depends on the individual's life. It depends what they're going through, their emotional state, all of these different things, because, with my coaching, it is based on the individual. It's not one size fits all, and that's what's difficult with it. And so a lot of it comes down to that self-reflection, to tune into truth, to see what is actually going on, so that then we can start to tune that truth into aligning with what you want your truth to be.
Yeah, that's the work, I think. And that's like the work that we all need to do, because it's challenging work. It's at least for me, it's really challenging work.
It's excruciating. Or at least it can be, because it's hard. I mean, you're looking at yourself directly in the mirror and saying, I am not going to look away no matter how hard it gets.
Yeah, and that's the, because for me, that's like the way that I would suffer with or struggle with that, or way I do struggle with that, is like, because I always think like, one, I could be doing more. And then if that's not the thought, then it's like, then I'm not doing the right things. If I think that I need to be doing more and that's not it, then I'm likely not doing the right things. And then then I'm like, oh my God, well, what should I be doing? And then, then you can get paralyzed from that. And there's been plenty of times where I have been paralyzed from that. And you feel like you feel like you don't have time, because your nervous system is so dysregulated that you're not able to do the things that you need to do.
Yeah, it's complicated. But at the same time, this is why I do self-mastery coaching, because it's about tuning into yourself and seeing what your truth is and discovering how it works for you. And so if you are dysregulated, like, why are you dysregulated? Getting into that, and then going into the places where You're starting to witness yourself to such an extent that you're seeing what works, what doesn't, and adjusting as you go to find your own mastery of yourself. And then through that, you can start to shift your life in the ways that actually align with you. Because a lot of the times when we're so busy and doing busy work rather than work that is pushing us forward, it's because we don't really know what steps to take. And when we don't know what steps to take, we just stay stuck because we're scared to take any step, because you think that you could potentially go in the wrong direction. But the truth is you can never go in the wrong direction. You can just take steps. And so with a lot of people, it's about finding the ability to regulate enough where you can take a deep breath and be brave to take one step in any direction, because then the next step reveals itself from there. And that's, the hardest part of life, where we are trying to stay safe in a place where we know all of the steps. But I've always believed that if you're on your own path, no one's created the path before, so you only know the next step after the other. Because there's no path there. You're creating it as you go. So you're standing in the unknown all the time.
I guess you could say that for everybody, right? Because even people who look like they're on a very similar path, two players in the NFL who have played the same position, and that, he's like, oh, those guys are the same. And it's like, that's never true.
Right. Everyone's life is unique.
Everyone's life is unique, and we've all had to take a different path. And two, I think, a lot of, another defense mechanism is pity, self-pity. You feel bad for yourself. That's another thing to keep you stuck, to keep, and just not, and what I try to do is just be like, well, that's just not the, that's just the way that I'm perceiving that right now. It's not the actual truth. I'm just doing that for, to keep myself safe, or, to change a narrative in my head or something.
Yeah, I used to do the same.
Yeah.
And then I realized that my self-pity was the identification with the victim mindset. And I realized I did that because the only way I felt like I'd get love or attention was by having something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So when you always have something wrong, people need to care for you.
Right.
And so then you take that on as part of your identity. As a broken person, I was a depressed person, and I'd always have something wrong because I felt like no one would care about me if not. So this is where you can really start to turn inward and see that your inner world is actually dictating the external world and how you see everything.
Yeah. It's, it's like with me, I feel like I've had times in my life where I've had groups of friends that I was really close with, and then, something happened in the group, for whatever reason, just didn't, even though you bring so much to the group and so much giddy up, and you think that it's like, oh, if that person went through the same situation, I would be with, my perception, I would not act like they're acting towards me. So then you feel rejection, and you feel, exile. And so to then take those steps again, to put yourself out there, to be the person that you authentically want to be, you're like, oh, I'm not going to do that because last time I got hurt.
Right.
So it's the body is, but that's not, you gotta, what I do is I just I'm not that person anymore. And the world is, that's not my reality now. And so why would I let that affect how I act in today's day and age?
Yeah, but those things can dictate your whole rest of your life too, because you might be so hurt from the rejection that you never put yourself in those vulnerable situations again because you don't want to feel that same pain again. And this is where we become programmed by all of this stuff that takes place in life, and it dictates how we view everything. When you're young and you're on the playground and someone calls you weird, you're never going to act that way again, and you're always going to shapeshift into a way that you think everyone wants you to be, so that you never have that same hurt from the rejection again. And that weird was usually them calling your true self weird before you started wearing a mask because you were so young. And so then you started to believe that the version of you that is you isn't good enough. And you start to form beliefs around that, which now you perceive the whole world differently because you're seeing it through a different lens. But to your point, you have to eventually come to the place where you realize those events don't dictate who you are forever. they don't actually ever really dictate who you are. It's all the other individual's way of perceiving you. Were you actually weird, or did someone just feel insecure and they had to take you down a little?
Yeah, dude, that's exactly like it's so funny because it's like and listeners have definitely, they hear me talk about this all the time, but it's like when I didn't, but I'm just having this thought about it now, which is actually like a new perception on it. And so I like had that, thing where I needed to not put myself out there, and was not putting myself out there because I was, in an internal time where felt like I needed to protect myself, and I had hurt. And like, the drug thing, like, you go to pharmacy school and you have a drug problem, like you're, the poster child of it, especially when I was the guy, I was just the guy who helped everybody and did everything. Everybody knew me. I was all great friends with everybody. So, but you don't have this, like the perception that I'm seeing now is like, so I started to dance probably like 8 years ago, where when I first started to do it, I would throw up. I would vomit everywhere and be so self-consciously nervous what everybody thought of me. But I knew that I wanted to dance. I knew that my body, not even that I wanted to, that I needed to do. I needed to move my body and now I know that I needed to shake the trauma. I was trying to shake the trauma and what I went through off my body, and just feel good and learn how to feel good again. And so I learned how to do that. But I didn't know necessarily that that was a reflection. I just thought that I was learning how to become more of myself. But now like from what I'm hearing today, is like it was just, I was actually learning how to become, how to deal with that internal world that I had created, that I created, and how to get over that, and how to get back to the baseline that I wanted to be as a person who can openly and freely express himself.
Right. As you.
As me.
And that's it. I'm convinced that like the first half of your life is about creating a healthy ego. The second half is about removing all the programming of all the protection mechanisms to be able to express yourself and be you. Because you going and learning how to dance, the getting sick and everything is your body being so overstimulated because of maybe a fear of rejection or judgment or whatever, that it dictates your world. And, one point in your life, you were a version of you that could probably dance without any fear at all because you're just being you.
Mm.
And so once we get past that fear of rejection, then we can start to express ourselves as who we are, and life opens up again. You feel safe. And I think that's like the key to it, is learning how to feel safe being who you really are.
So we put up is the ego the wall? Is the ego what is, and like the way that you're talking about the ego, but it's a good thing. It's a good thing that we do that, because we have to build those defense mechanisms, and we have to build that within our structure before we can open up to something else.
So I think that the way I perceive the ego is it is your sense of self. And that includes a lot of things. It includes instinctual protection mechanisms that are because we're an animal and it's in our DNA to protect ourselves to survive. It includes your sense of self and how you perceive yourself. But it also includes all of the pain body. And when we are in our pain body, we are identified with the ego. And the pain body is essentially all of the stimulation in yourself that is trying to keep you safe. That's how your world becomes distorted, because you were called weird on a playground, and now you have this pain body that is hurting, but you're protecting yourself by doing all of this other stuff so that it never happens again. And so to get behind the ego, it's not saying I'm getting rid of my physical self. It's saying I am tuning back into my truth outside of the illusionary perspective of me trying to stay safe. And so, I think that we throw that word ego around a lot, and no one really knows exactly how the definition of it plays out. But to me, the ego is the distorted protection of the self. And we create the healthy ego to learn how to be a human, because you have to learn the rules of being a human to work in society. But then later you realize that half of those rules, people don't know why they actually do it. And so that's when you start to break down those walls and start to come to the truth of like, why am I doing this? Is it really what I want to do? Or is it based on protection? And as you deconstruct those walls, you come to your true self that's been underneath all of those programs your whole life.
We all know how important strength training is for long-term health, but it can be hard to know where to start. I was in the same spot a year ago. You want to make sure you're doing exercises right, avoiding injury, and getting results, but it's easy to feel lost without a plan. That's when I found On Target Fitness. At On Target, you get a custom strength program, personalized attention in a small group setting, and the nutrition coaching you need for real lasting change. In the year I've been working out there, I've gotten stronger, more mobile, and more confident. My form has improved, and even something as simple as walking feels better. The group energy keeps me motivated, and every workout is fun. On Target just opened a new location in Kingston. Now you've got even more options to experience their amazing approach. If you're ready for lasting change, head to www.ontargetfit.com and schedule your session today.
I agree with you, and I'm following you 100%. It's just when it comes down to like the basic needs that people need, like, you know, like food and shelter and love, like, are they able to, like, in regard to what you were saying, is that still, like, if that stuff's not present and they don't have, then is there a chance for that person to be able to, you know, to still, like, you know, heal and learn? And
I mean, I think so. I think it's more challenging.
Okay.
Because we have the natural survival mechanisms in us.
Right, that's what I'm
those
saying.
Foundational things to keep you safe, to keep you well.
Right.
And so, you know, that's why, like, in the beginning, it's about creating that healthy ego. So you have the structure, the system of a life that is sustainable. And then from there, you can start to uncover how to kind of get outside of needing to be attached to it in a survival sense. Because if you have a proper system and structure in place where you have the food, the shelter, and everything, you don't need to worry about it in a way where it's like, I'm so scared it's going to be gone. And a lot of the times I've worked with clients where they have like a food scarcity fear because they grew up in a home where there wasn't a lot of food.
Mm-hmm.
And so they lived their whole life hoarding food or eating everything all the time. And it's like when we are attached to things emotionally, that's where we need to look. Because you can just have food because you know you have to take care of yourself and survive. Or you can be in fear around making sure you have to have food because you could die. There's two different ways of going about it. One is just, I'm taking care of myself because I love myself. This is what I have to do as a human. The other is, I am so scared I'm not going to survive because if I don't have food, death is imminent.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, that is probably a belief that a lot of people have because based on trauma that they've gone through.
Right.
And but do they, like, what if they don't have, but, you know, so they should like, what if that person is still in food scarcity? What if they're still in food scarcity? Should they still try to switch their thinking to?
I think so. And
because it will bring them their life.
Well, we have, you know, I think that the people are going to, let me rephrase this. If we were to look at an example of this, right, and we were to see someone is in a place where they are scarce on food, truthfully, and they are, like, you know, trying to figure out how do I get more food and everything, they can either live in fear about it or they can live in a place of, I'm just figuring this out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you get to, when you are consciously aware enough and in control of your emotions and regulated enough, you get to choose how you approach the situation. And so, yes, it might be a matter of survival in a way, like literally survival, because you don't have enough food. And so you have to go out of your way to figure out how to get food. But you can go through it frantically, which is probably burning more energy, putting you in a more difficult situation where you can't think logically. You're trying to irrationally figure this out. Or you can bring yourself into regulation and say, okay, what are the proper steps I need to take in order to create more structure and sustainability in my life surrounding the food? So that way you can take those proper steps forward rather than just being in fear and freezing or fighting or whatever it may be because you're in survival.
Yeah. I think that's a great perspective on it, and just trying to, like, even with something that's not as serious, like somebody, it's like with anything where you're trying to move through something and you're trying to move forward through it, it's to go into it with a regulated nervous system and to be calm and not have frantic energy about it. You're always going to get a better outcome.
Yeah. And that's, to me, why nervous system regulation is maybe the most important thing that we should learn as a human being.
I agree. And you want to know what's like that is, and please expound on this. The like, if I didn't, the mushrooms are what have taught me that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And it's like, it's because I've learned, like when you have your time by yourself, and I like to foam roll, that's what I do. I foam roll when when I journey and when I go into ceremony, and what I like my breath, I can hold my breath for 4 or 5 minutes, something that I can't do now. And then it gives me perception on like, oh, like, why am I not able to do this regularly? What's going on? What's holding me back? And it's like, oh, it's probably because you're so frantic and nervous about what's next. And so, like, just learning how to breathe, and that I was able to teach myself that, the mushrooms are, and I did teach myself, but it was with the help of the mushrooms. I think it's wonderful. And it's really the coolest part about it, dude, is that I don't, like, I thought that's what when I asked you earlier, like, is this something people need to do forever and all this? Like, I thought that it was to always have the experience. I was starting to learn that I could take some stuff with me, like emotionally with me, but it, like with the breathwork stuff, like there'd be, I'd be like, oh man, for me to get that deep again, where I'm at a 5-minute breath hold, I'm going to need the mushrooms. I'm going to need the medicine. And I'm learning that's it'll always be a part of what I do and a part of my life, and I'll always have it to do and to be able to use, but I don't need it to be able to get to that same level of like understanding, which to me is like wild, because it was so profound when I learned this, and it was so like, I understood that I could take stuff out of it and take stuff out of the journey, but when I was in the journey, it was so profound. The healing was so profound that I was like, I'm going to always need this. I'll always need this. And then, a couple of years later, I'm at a point now where I'm like, oh, I can do this. I can do this.
And I think that's a really important thing to note, because a lot of the times, especially in the beginning, when we start something, we get like almost addicted to the method. And we think we need this thing to become this version of ourselves. And then when you work with a mushroom more and more, you start to work with integration more and more. And you realize the mushroom is actually just opening me up to a version of myself I can be down the road if I continue to put in the work. And then you start to shift your beliefs, and you realize that, oh, your beliefs of not being able to do it without the mushroom was probably holding you more back than if you had slowly over time believed that you can do it without the mushroom, because your beliefs create your reality.
Right. But it's kind of interesting that I was able to learn that, and somebody who was in that, like, oh, like, to have this as profound of an experience, I need to have the mushroom. It needs to be that. That was my thinking. To be somebody who then, and that's what's great about the mushrooms, is they help you change perception. So, like, even if you are, they help you change perception, but they could also, like, there's some people who probably always get caught in that, right? And they're not able to get to the next step. And so how do they get to the next step? Because I was able to learn it somehow.
Well, and I think it's a slow progression naturally. And, a lot of people will either be attached to the method doing it for them, like the mushroom, or needing to meditate to be able to calm themselves or whatever, when little do you realize that it is just showing you how to do it. Like taking breaths in can help to regulate yourself. You don't need to stop and go sit on the floor for 45 minutes in order to do that same thing. And you can't do that when you're in the middle of a conversation with someone that's stimulating you. With the mushrooms, it's similar, where people can get caught up in a place where they're not witnessing themselves as if they are in control of themselves. They think the mushroom's doing it for them. And you got to that place where you realized through self-awareness, wait, I can do this myself. The mushroom showed me how, and it's teaching me more and more how to get there, but I don't necessarily need it. It's just my teacher for right now to get me to that place, and then I can take it on myself.
Yeah, and I guess I was doing that the whole time because every time I would realize like, oh man, like, and I'm a pharmacist, so I know the half-life of the drug. I know that it's not, the molecule. I know it's gonzo for my body. And, still 6, 7, 25, 35 days later, I'm still having the positive benefits and the impact that I learned on the night that I did my ceremony.
Right.
And so I knew that I was driving something. I knew that I was driving something, but I didn't. The extra step that I needed to take was that, I can really go hard at this. It's not just like, and it doesn't always have to be incremental. Sometimes it is incremental and it's 1%, and sometimes it's 10%, and sometimes it's 25%.
Well, and that, I think, is why it's so important to understand how we as humans work. Because understanding your own neuroscience and how our brains work and how our systems actually function allow us to work with them. So like with the mushroom, we know that it helps to lower the default mode network. We also know that it opens up and expands neuroplasticity so you can help to rewire your brain easier. So if you lower the default mode network to be able to see in a new perspective, because all of the ways that you've been programmed and how you perceive everything is literally being suppressed, now you can see it with a new set of eyes. And your brain is able to be rewired easier. So then you can now see it in a new set of eyes, work to incorporate that more and more, and it becomes your new truth, the new default. Mm-hmm. And so then all of a sudden you now realize, after a month, I'm still seeing this because you have been reprogramming yourself through the new perspectives the mushroom's giving you to become that new version of yourself. And it sticks.
Yeah, it's a great way to heal, man. It's a really great way to heal, and I wonder what it will look like, because you said it great. It's not, there is so much benefit that could happen from the medical side, and when I say that, I mean like you could have somebody come in who is has arthritis or has some type of postural alignment that's causing some type of disease because their spine is pushing on their liver and it's causing their liver enzymes to increase, and it's creating this cascading effect. And just by doing the mushrooms, they could have, just by doing them and being told like, hey, do these type of exercises while you're on the mushrooms and do this type of breath, you could heal, your body will start to heal itself and it will figure it out. Like, that's what I think of when I think of the medical side. And then like the spiritual side is like the bigger, the more like expansive look at it, where you can change the way your thought patterns are and you can change your reality. And like how does it look, how does care look? Like, what does care look like in 3 years from now and 5 years from now? Because they can be, it's so beneficial for both. And there's going to be people who are driving it, for both in both, paths.
Yeah, and I think that we need to come to a place where it blends. And of course, there's going to be both sides of the spectrum. They'll stay separate, but I think we will find that over time they'll blend too. And because it's important to have the medical side where you understand the neuroscience and all of this, but also, if I were working with the mushroom but didn't have any spiritual connection with it, then I'm like missing out on a huge place of opportunity. Because with my depression, the thing that has helped me more than anything is creating a connection with God. And I don't mean that in like a religious sense. I mean that as like the energy that is everything, including me and you and everything else. And knowing that we are interconnected with it all, and knowing that it's all here for the greater good of experience and learning, creates trust and faith. And when we don't have that, there's no hope. And so the spiritual side of it really complements the medical side, because without it, you're disconnected. because it's mind, body, soul. It's not just mind, body. And so, yeah, go.
What does that care look like?
Well,
What does the blended care look like?
I mean, in that, I don't know exactly. I don't have all the answers. You know, I think we're going to see a lot of different variations of it. But what I will say is that it looks like having deep respect for the traditions that have been there, because they understand how it works in the ways they've been doing it for thousands of years. It also looks like taking the new, I'll say, Western medicine type of science insights and taking that knowledge and combining it with it so that we can understand what the body's actually doing too.
Mm.
You know, because when we combine the two, we realize they're much more similar than we ever thought. Like quantum physics is now proving all of the spiritual, you know, theories that have always been there for more than quantum physics has even been around.
Right. Yeah, that's
Way
what's
more.
fascinating. That's what's fascinating to me. It's like we're the spirituality that everyone, you know, that we just thought was woo woo. It's like not woo woo at all. It's super science based, and yeah, we can prove it.
Yeah.
Like, it's that we're coming into a new paradigm. That is for certain. And I do think a world where they're blended together, where, like, you know, people are able to truly, you know, there's going to be so many forces that are like fighting it, though, that are like against it. And, you know, because of the just capitalistic reasons, and, you know, and then maybe like religious reasons too, people might be against it. And just like it's going to shift so much thinking, you know, so that's that, you know, that people have, you know, society, like it for whatever reason, I don't know necessarily all the reasons, but it keeps people down for a reason. And they, you know, this will lift it up, you know, this will like lift the veil from people and say like, oh shoot, like we don't have to follow these rules, or we don't have to do this, or we can do this like this. And it's definitely going to cause, like you said, I think it is going to maybe cause some crisis at first, and some, you know, some really upheaval, but it will create a new paradigm, I hope, where things are better. And I don't want to touch on how you said like hope, and how that, you know, you need hope, and like just knowing that everything is there for the greater good. I want to feel that way. And when I'm with human beings like me and you today, and, you know, with Hutchie, you know, we're doing this, and like I feel that way. When I go home with my family, I feel that way. When I'm with, you know, with friends, I feel that way. When I'm with strangers, I feel that way. But like there's a lot of shit going on in the world, man. There's a lot of bad stuff that, you know, that's happening. And so it's like it's hard sometimes to have that trust that like everything's here for, you know, for good and for learning.
Yeah. I mean, I think that right now is, at least based on the way I perceive it, it is maybe the hardest time we've ever had to believe that we're moving in the right direction, you know? And that's where faith comes into place, because faith is, I believe it, whether there's proof or not. And so for me, it's like I said earlier, you know, suffering creates transformation. So the hardest thing is that there are innocent lives being impacted in a lot of different ways throughout the world, you know, and because of that, we are losing this hope, this faith. But what if these are events that are catalysts to move towards a world where that no longer happens? You know, and you start to see it as these devastating but real transformative spaces to learn how to do better, so that we can say enough of all this stuff that is based on fear and control and survival mechanisms. Let's move towards a world where we can actually be in a place that is supportive, where we actually hear one another and connect on our commonalities instead of our differences, knowing we're just humans doing our best. But we unfortunately have to go through, and I wish it wasn't this way, of course, some type of difficult experiences like this, what's going on, in order to learn that this doesn't work. Otherwise, how would you learn?
Yeah, you got it. Like that, the only way is through. The only way to grow is to get uncomfortable. I know that's been my story, and I know it's been, you know, all the people that I've talked to, it's their story too. But I also have people tell me, like, because I do agree with you, and I say this a lot to people in other generations and stuff, like, whoa, is this, guys like this is a, like even in our generation too, and all the younger generation, to say to everybody, I'm like, this is probably the most difficult time to see. There's a lot of stuff going on. We have access to so much. We've never been exposed, to this much, negativity at all times, and we don't know the change that's happening. And they're like, well, if you think about it, currency and fire and the wheel, and I'm like, yeah, maybe, but I still think that this is juiced up, more so than ever before. And I'm curious because people will tell me that the yin and the yang, and so like that for there to be happiness, there always needs to be suffering. And so I'm just wondering if does that always have to be, is there, like, you're telling me that there's going to be a future where there's less suffering. Can that be the case, or will the suffering just change, or is it sometimes there's more suffering and then there's less suffering? How does that work? How do you see that?
Well, I think that we have to look at the natural law of like ebb and flow, of rhythm, where there is a pendulum that swings one way or another while we live in a dualistic world. And so when people say the yin and the yang, it is, the representation that if you are able to feel this good, you have to also be able to feel this bad in order to understand the extremes of each opposite pole. With that being said, I do believe that, like you hear about in Buddhism and whatnot, like the middle path. There's this third path where you're able to live in paradox. The mind can't really comprehend paradox, which is part of it, but the truth is there is immense suffering and immense joy happening at the same time. And so it's about not being attached to one side or the other, because the truth is there's going to always be suffering. We're not going to get to a place where that evaporates. It's impossible. But at the same time, we can have the other side coming in to support the suffering, which makes it be this cyclical, beautiful rhythm that is taking place where you suffer, you help support, you grow, evolve. And so it's not we are going to our demise, and it's not we are going to utopia. It is we are standing in balance with all of it. And that means that, suffering is inevitable. We're never going to get to a place where you completely get rid of it. We're going to get to a place where we understand that it's a part of life and we can dance with it instead of reject it. And hopefully we can improve the horrendous amounts of suffering or, the ways that it's taking place. But at the same time, who really knows? We don't know until it happens. And it'll always be this natural evolution throughout life to see what we can make of all of this. And hopefully we can make it something beautiful.
So do we focus on it? Do we focus on the suffering like right now, or is that the way out? Like that we don't focus on it? Because like that's the I'm trying to grasp what you're saying and trying to understand it, but I shouldn't say understand it, because I kind of do understand it, but just to go deeper on it, it's like there's like war, and that killing and exploitation and like slavery is still happening, and all this bad shit is still happening, and like, but there's also all this great stuff happening too, and there's a bunch of joy and all this stuff. And so is it still in balance right now, and then what will just be in a different balance in the future? But it's like I still feel like people are probably going to be killing each other and doing that into the future and stuff as well.
Well, and I think that you're right. I think that the balance is around being able to hold both sides of it, where we have our hearts absolutely breaking because of the suffering.
Are we not capable of that right now?
Right now, the way I see it is so many people are in unconscious protection mechanisms that it is me versus you instead of us together figuring it out. And that's the difference. Because when it comes to the suffering of the world, and I won't pretend like I have the answers because I don't, but when it comes to the suffering of the world, it is like us seeing that we're all humans trying to navigate this together instead of it being this side's right, this side's wrong. We need to start seeing that like we're humans just doing what we think is right based on trying to create the best life we think is right. And if we can start to hear one another instead of yelling at one another, and we can start to actually listen, then we don't have to ignore the suffering. We can instead embrace it in a way that is compassionate because we see one another instead of hating one another. And that's where the things start to shift. Because when we're in war, most of the time it's like, who chose the war? It's not the people.
Never the people.
Right.
Unless it's versus the people who chose the first war.
Sure. And so it comes down to like, how do we, as the people, as the inhabitants of Earth, how do we come to a place of harmony where, yes, there's going to be hurt people that hurt people. That's just the way it is, because people have traumas, people have suffering, but how we handle it can be so much better rather than more hate to go against the hate. You know, I've heard a thing where it's like, you don't go to the anti-war rally, you go to the peace rally. Because what is the energy you're trying to give off? You're trying to give off peace, not hate against war, because that's just fueling more hate. Doesn't support it.
Yeah, I feel like that's a lot of what's going on right now is a lot of hate, a lot of anti-war protests instead of a lot of peaceful protests.
Right.
Yeah, maybe that's, not that there's not some, plenty of peaceful protests going on, because there probably is. But we gotta, I think it just comes down to like, understanding each other and like not being as polarized and thinking that people are, their identities are all wrapped up in their beliefs, and that like really we're all just human beings, like who are trying their best.
That's it.
Yeah.
And, that's what, at least working with a mushroom, I've seen deeply. I've sat with hundreds of people, and no matter where people stand with their beliefs, at the base level of it, they're just humans doing their best. That's it. And they just want love, safety, compassion, and to live a life that feels like it's worth something.
Yeah, I think the problem that people have is that some people do it and do that. Their protection mechanisms are in such a way that they're like very harmful.
Yes.
And they're very hurtful.
And that's why I said hurt people.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is that way. Because most of the time it's us expressing ourselves in a way that becomes harmful to others. And so then it's like you got to get down to the root of the problems, because usually the harm you are doing to people is because you are hurt yourself. So why is that playing out in the way that is making you feel better? What is the root? Because just throwing someone to the side saying they're a bad person, it's not solving anything other than shaming them. And we have a big shaming problem in this world where you are told you're a bad boy at a young age to hopefully prevent you from doing something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But what it actually does is teaches you you're not good as a person, which now impacts the rest of your life. Instead of just saying, no, we don't do that because of this, and teaching, we instead blame someone for not being good, and then it impacts everything. And that's what we do. You see it, hate to bring up politics, but you see it in politics where it's, I am shaming the other side because they're bad and they're the cause for all of this.
Mm-hmm.
When really it's like, we need to come together, have this open conversation to say, okay, where can we find a middle ground of what our purpose actually is? And it's to create a better world. That's what the underlying mission for all of these people is to create a world that feels better for all of us.
It's not everyone's mission, or it should be everyone's mission, but that's not everyone's mission, right? Some people's, I think their thought process is, and this is because they've been raised by hurt people, and hurt people hurt people, and their mission is to make as much money as possible and exploit people at every, and it doesn't matter if you're exploiting people at every turn, but to just get as much from you can for yourself while you're here.
Right. But at the same time, they're creating a better world for themselves doing that.
For themselves, but you said for themselves and everyone else.
True.
So they're not creating a better world for everyone else, right? Like, so it's like that it creates a situation, like, and I think that that's just where that's where I wish I knew a little bit more, and then maybe I don't need to know, maybe I don't even need to think about it.
Yeah.
you know, but I just, that's the one thing that I'm always like, because you want to know what? Maybe it's okay for me to think about that, because that's really what I see, like the togetherness is like right now we're just in a system, and it's not these people's fault. They lived their life in what like I said, I don't blame them, and they were doing the best they could with their situation, and sometimes that led to them being a billionaire, and that system and the control that it's created is not conducive to helping the most people. And so, like, as we, the people, and that can understand that and come together, maybe that will come back a little bit. And I'm not a guy who's like preaching that everyone should have the same money or we should all be at this, like, I'm socialism, communism, whatever. That's not me. But I think that to get it into balance is important.
I think that there's an important perspective to look at with that, because this is really good conversation. And when it comes to the whole billionaire thing, because there's a movement right now to hate the billionaires. That's the truth. Everyone sees it.
Mm-hmm.
And usually it's around them not paying taxes or whatever, right? And so maybe, we need to reflect on that. I think also a lot, and not all, but a lot of these very wealthy people took a huge risk, lived in awful ways for a long time while they took this risk to build a company that created the life they have. And so money to me and all of that is a mirror to show your true self. And so with this billionaire, he has the opportunity to create tons of jobs for people, which gives people better lives. At the same time, if that person creates all of these jobs and pays them awful fares, now you start to see the characteristics of the individual. But it has nothing to do with them being a billionaire. It has nothing to do with the money itself. It has to do with the characteristics of the individual. Because in this day and age, I just saw a thing where there have been more millionaires this year, I think, than in many years before, new millionaires coming to be. Which means that if we go out of our own way and take the risk, we could potentially do the same thing. So I have been in this place of, and I don't know the answers, like I said, but doing deep reflection on, is my hatred towards the billionaires just me being upset I haven't taken the risk to build my life into something like that too? Because I have all the opportunities to make all the money in the world, and I'm convinced we have so many resources right now. Every person, if they really were supported in the ways that gave them the resources to learn and whatnot, I think most people could become very wealthy. Who's to say that we don't just create a world, and this is just hypothetical, of course, but create a world where everybody has their own individual, unique skill set that they can offer to the world that brings them a good amount of money themselves to live in an independent state so that it's their own money. And they're extremely wealthy because they offer it. And why would you hate someone for that?
I certainly wouldn't.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't. I don't hate the billionaires. I just I know that there are some that, that and it's not their, like I said, it's unconscious. It's not like they're consciously making these decisions. It's just the system that exists that we live in, and it's not. People are, it creates more opportunity. And like I said, because billionaires became a thing, and corporations were able to grow, people were able to gain more, to gain more wealth and to get more stuff and to, to have more security with their family. And I think that stuff's all great. I just think, and I said, there's just, it is so is the duality of it, because I know what you're saying. There'll be more wealth transfer in the next, in this next cycle between when the boomers die off and they transfer their wealth to the millennials, that like they'll be the most, millionaires ever created. And so many people, and there is great opportunity, but at the same time, there's like less opportunity in, for people to get out of the bottom than before. And like sometimes, dude, I think this, like, I'm not that. So should I not even care about that? I'm middle class, and I'm going to be one of those people who ascends. I already know it. I know that's going to be the case.
Same.
And I love that. And that's a giddy up.
Mm-hmm.
But I do, sometimes I get caught up in thinking, about people who have less than I do, and I feel bad, and I don't know why I feel that way, and I don't know why, maybe because I associated that way when I was younger, or like what, I don't know, and maybe I'm just I like to think of it as compassionate or sympathetic, but then it's like if it just holds me back, I shouldn't let that happen, because I know I'll be one of the people who I'm already affecting people positively, from that standpoint, but once I have more to build, I will affect more people positively.
Right. And that is the difference, is that you are looking at yourself in a way where you're wanting to build to help, so that it's not you're just taking all of this money and running to your own little place and letting everyone else be manipulated in a way that they're getting less. And this is where in society, it's so important for us to understand our humanistic tendencies and how we can be manipulated, because all marketing and all of these structures and different practices that businesses incorporate is human manipulation. To understand that they are selling you what you want, not what you need. And so they're trying to get you convinced to get this item or service or whatever it is because it's going to make you feel better, as if you are egoically doing better. But you don't actually need it. And so then we start to understand, like, how is the business laid out? How is it structured? Because like you said, you know that you're going to move in that direction where it is growth. But you're probably not going to create the business in a way where you're taking advantage and manipulating individuals without their knowing so that you can profit. Because that's not really benefiting anyone. That's just you lining your pockets. And so there is going to be this shift in the structure of businesses, I think, as the years go on, and who knows how many years it'll take, where it's less about, let me manipulate you to make sure that you want what I have, and more about, let me create something that betters your life.
Yeah, I think so too. I think with the way that like technology is coming so rapidly, that's actually going to be the biggest skill that someone can have. Like somebody like you, man, like what you're doing, like you are at the like I know there's a lot of coaches out there, I guess, for people who are doing it right and who are good at it, that human connection is going to be at such a premium, and learning from other humans is going to be such a premium in the near future, that it's like I think will be one of the top skills in 10 years.
Sure. Yeah. And I think that, a big reason I got into the coaching industry and the ways that I do it is so that I can help wake people up so that they won't live in a life that they are constantly being manipulated because they're unconscious of it. Yeah. Because the more we become aware and awake to the truth rather than the illusion, we then are able to stand in our own power. And that's a different type of power than what is presented in what we see of all these protests and stuff, because that would be just putting another person in place to have the same type of system. Just someone that is in power in the viewpoints that you like. Power is, I am standing in my own sovereignty for the betterment of everything. So it's giving the people their power back because they're able to step outside of the illusion of the manipulation because they don't understand how they work. That we have dopamine, and that when you're scrolling on social media, you're literally becoming addicted to it, which makes you do it more, and then they profit more because of it. But something as simple as that most people know these days now, they're okay with it being that way. And I think not until we start to get to a place where we are more dedicated to a healthier future than a content present, we will stay right where we are.
Got to get uncomfortable.
You got to get uncomfortable to grow towards something better.
Yeah, and when the masses are, I think that shift is happening, like where the masses are becoming more uncomfortable. Yep. Like with, just like with some people accept it sometimes, with like the screen stuff, like the addiction to the phones, like people are like they're still happening, and it's still like people are still all over the place. They're starting to talk about it more and being like, that's not the way. We need to connect more. We need to figure out a way to connect. And when enough people get angry about that because it causes enough destruction, which I think we'll see, because like I'm blessed that like it was pretty quick. Okay. The children who are like, 8 years old to like 20 years old right now, I feel I feel bad for them because they were given screens and we didn't necessarily know how addictive this stuff was. We didn't know how pervasive it was. And they were just like told, like, capitalism, this is how we're raising our kids now, and doing this very quickly. We've already started to push back on that. There's some parents who are like, hey, we're going to give our kid a screen at 2, at 1, whatever, and they're just a part of it. And then there's other parents, who are very resistant and very, my kid's not going to get a phone until, 11th, 10th, 11th grade. They're not going to, get this stuff. And there's starting to be conversation about it. And so that's the type of like change that, that we'll need to see.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, like you said, we're starting to see it. And, also with those people from 8 to 20, like, they have their own unique opportunities based on their own perspective as well.
I think about that a lot too, dude. They might be able to explain, and I think about that too. Am I hurting my kid because I'm not putting the screen in front of his face? Like, that's a real thought that I've had, because I'm like, dude, these other kids are going to be way better at the stuff that, if we're going into this screen world, they're going to be way better at this, than my kid, because my kid's not going to get the same exposure to it, because I'm going to purposefully limit that.
Yeah. But it's also educating them so they understand what the screen can do to you or anything else in life. So you understand that it's, banking on you becoming addicted to it. So you're aware and conscious of it, so you can use it as a tool and not an escape.
Right. Yeah. Use it as a tool. And it's tough though, man. It's tough because they make it pervasive. You want to, the other day I put my phone in the lawnmower and I couldn't, the lawnmower ate my phone. And like for 2 days, I went on my computer and was like, oh, let me just check my bank account. And I couldn't get into my bank account on my computer, which I've gone into 1,000 times because I didn't have my phone to tell my computer that I was able to do this. And it's like, oh, you guys are doing this is a purposeful thing. This is a purposeful thing to keep this thing in my hand and and if it's in your hand all the time, naturally the Instagram, the TikTok is going to open. And so it's like just the resistance needs to be so strong.
Yeah.
We need to figure out new ways to resist and just to talk about it. And I'm glad that we are.
It's the next evolution of the interruptive advertisement. Because back in the day when TVs became a thing, there were like no advertisements. And then all of a sudden they started putting them in there to interrupt your daily programming to advertise certain things, to make it you want to buy this because you want to buy it, not because you need it. And now we have a phone. Think about all the ads you see all day long. It is all programming you to be more of a consumer because we are the product. It is, let me be attached to my phone to such an extent that this stuff all comes in. And then we get brainwashed into an illusionary state because we think that through the phone is reality, when really reality is out here.
That's the biggest thing. That's what I'm trying to say is like when I'm with people, when I'm with my family, when I'm with my friends, it's all good.
Right.
And things are all good. But when you look at the phone and you actually see what's going on in the world because the phone is telling you what's going on in the world, and I believe a lot of those things, it's like, I don't want to get lost in this, and that's why I think it's the hardest part is just to be, because we never were connected. We're never this interconnected before,
right.
Which is an amazing, beautiful thing. And it's going to be really cool. But right now it's like, oh man, this is a lot to handle. Before we only had to worry about like 1,000 people, 2,000 people
but I think
that we knew.
Exactly. And when it comes to that, it's also, coming all the way back to like the nervous system and everything. Our nervous system had not been created to be able to hold all of the stresses of the entire world that we are now tuned into through social media. And so we are more dysregulated and in survival mode than we ever have been before. And because of that, it's become normalized, where the dysregulation is more the normal than not. And so it creates another shift of reality because of the phone, because now we're absorbing all of the stuff that you're seeing on there. I saw a quote or whatever you want to call it, at one point that it said, some fool is sitting by a waterfall in the middle of the woods without his phone, not realizing he's supposed to be terrified for his life.
Yeah.
And it put everything in perspective for me. It all of a sudden made me realize that I need to focus on what I can bring for the better in my own life right here, because I can't change the world. I can only change my own inner world, and hopefully that will ripple out and make a better impact. But if I'm so fearful from being focused and scrolling on my phone of all of this news and all of these fear-mongering things all the time, all I'm going to do is freeze, shut down, and make a worse world. Because now I'm traumatized and I can't bring good to the world as deeply as if I wasn't.
Yeah. I'm excited to dive in with you and to figure out how to get better control and change my inner world. So we're definitely gonna tap in on that. Where can people find you if they do want to, find you to do some work with you and, use your service and learn more about you?
Yeah, so I have a website, inner-evolutions.com. And I do, all self-mastery coaching, and that's with both the psilocybin mushroom, mostly through microdosing, but of course we do hold ceremonies through Sacred Earth Sanctuary. But also I work with a lot of people outside of the mushroom too, to bring that same transformation, because we need it more than ever right now, so that we can bring back our own sovereignty, to stand in our power and create a better world. And so that is my website. I mean, you can get to my email, rory@inner-evolutions.com too, and I'm always here.
Well, my friend, I'm definitely going to be, using those services and telling people about them, because you are connected and you have an understanding of this that I think is going to be very helpful in the future. And I appreciate you for that. Guys, you know where to follow him. He said it at would you have an Instagram at all?
I do. It's at the Spirit of Rory, and between each word is an underscore.
At spirit_of_Rory, giddy up. This guy is awesome, guys. Follow him. Rory, thank you so much, brother, for coming on the show, man. I'm going to continue to learn from you, and I'm excited to start walking the path more together.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Guys, check him out. Make sure you follow the show. Make sure you give some giddy up to your friends, to your family, because we are in this together. We will see you next time. Giddy up.
BeeWell.